She may not admit it. She may not even understand it. But when she feels it, she can't ignore it. There's one behavior, one way of being that bypasses her logic completely and speaks directly to her instincts. Let me ask you, what if desire had nothing to do with words and everything to do with presence? Most men try to convince her, impress her, win her approval with effort. But you don't persuade, you radiate. Because there's a difference between attention and attraction, between being seen and being felt deeply. Today, you'll uncover the one behavior that bypasses her conscious mind and awakens her hidden desire. It's not about seduction, it's about self-command. And when you master it, you don't chase her attention. You become the source of her emotional pull. No neediness, no performance. Just a calm, grounded presence that enters the room and shifts her entire nervous system. This is the quiet power of the Stoic man, the man who doesn't react but leads, not with force but with stillness. Now let's begin with the one behavior that changes everything. Number 1, the calm confidence that doesn't explain itself. Your certainty speaks louder than your words ever could. She's heard it all before. The compliments, the over-explaining, the nervous attempts to make her laugh, to make her stay, to make her believe that you're not like the other guys. And every time she hears those words, no matter how charming, no matter how polished, something deep within her retreats. Not because she doesn't want connection, but because she can smell the need behind the noise. What she craves isn't language, it's energy, and more specifically, it's the calm confidence of a man who no longer needs to convince. You've seen it before. The man who barely speaks, and yet everyone in the room leans in the one who holds eye contact, not to intimidate, but because he has nothing to hide. The man whose silence isn't awkward, it's magnetic. That is the behavior that bypasses logic. That is what triggers something raw and instinctive in her body, even when her mind hasn't caught up yet. Because her desire doesn't live in her thoughts. It lives in the space where your stillness meets her curiosity. You don't rush, you don't explain, you don't push your presence into the room, you anchor it. She feels you before you even speak. And when you do speak, your voice is slower, more deliberate, more composed than what she's used to. There's no urgency, no desperation, just this quiet certainty, the unspoken language of a man who doesn't need to prove anything because he already knows who he is. This is where most men lose her. They think attraction is about saying the right thing. They think confidence is loud. They think desire is built through stories, credentials, and strategies. But what actually works, what truly disrupts her patterns, is a man who can hold his own emotion in the face of hers. A man who can smile without reacting, listen without interrupting, walk away without resentment. Because you're not here to impress. You're here to observe, to feel, to select. And that shift in posture, that reversal of roles, makes her body respond long before her brain gives permission. It's not that you're cold, it's that you're full of your own direction, full of quiet standards, full of a strength that doesn't need to be measured by her approval. She doesn't know why she wants to get closer, why your silence stirs something that her logic can't decode. But she does, again and again. Because in your calm, she sees a man she cannot shake, a man whose worth is not negotiated, not performed, not offered up for judgment. And that is where her desire begins. Not in the words, but in the absence of them, not in your pursuit, but in your presence. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and your thoughts, grounded in peace and power, begin to color the air around you. She breathes that in, even if she doesn't realize it. And before she knows it, she wants more, not more of your attention, but more of your essence. Number 2, you make her feel your presence, not your pressure. Your non-neediness unlocks her instinct to pursue. Neediness is invisible ink, only visible to the part of her that decides whether she can trust you or whether she needs to guard her heart. And that part, it isn't listening to what you say. It's listening to what you need from her. The moment she feels your internal tension, that low, pulsing desire for her approval, her attention, her reaction, she withdraws. Not always physically, sometimes emotionally, subtly, quietly, but it happens every time. Because pressure is weight. It makes her nervous system brace. But your presence, when it's clean, unattached, and rooted, is different. It doesn't lean forward. It doesn't beg for reciprocity. It doesn't flood her with expectation. It holds space. You're simply there, fully calmly, not trying to win, not trying to avoid rejection, just being. And that shifts the dynamic entirely. Now, instead of defending herself, she begins to relax. Instead of trying to read you, she starts to feel you. Instead of analyzing what she should do, she simply follows the feeling that being near you creates. That feeling, that unpressured warmth, awakens something primal in her, because she realizes she's not being chased, she's being invited. An invitation stirs something deeper than demands ever could. This is the part most men never understand. When you don't need her to respond, she starts responding more. When you don't press, she starts to lean in. When you hold your center, she starts moving closer to it. Why? Because her feminine wants to open, but only in the presence of masculine energy that doesn't pull at her. The more you need, the more she closes. The less you need, the more she opens. Not because she's playing games, but because her body only trusts what feels safe to soften into. And your non-neediness, your ability to stay present without pushing, is what gives her that permission. It's the moment she starts texting first. It's the reason she starts asking deeper questions. It's why she remembers you long after the conversation ends. You gave her room to explore you, room to choose you, room to feel desire without being pulled into obligation. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And you embody that truth. You disregard the outcome. You stop trying to engineer her reaction. You focus instead on what you can control. Your breath, your presence, your intention. You sit in the moment like a mountain, unmoving, unaffected. And in that stillness, she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. A man who makes her feel wanted without ever making her feel trapped. A man who offers attention without turning it into currency. A man who can stay present without expecting her to give him something in return. That man is rare. And because he's rare, he stays in her mind. She doesn't understand it. All she knows is that when she was with you, she felt light. She felt free. And yet she wanted more. That's not pressure. That's presence. And it's why she'll keep coming back. Number 3, you control the tempo of every interaction. You move slower than her emotions, and it drives her wild. There's a rhythm underneath every interaction. Most men miss it. They move too fast, matching her excitement when she's up, mirroring her worry when she's uncertain, trying to keep pace with her emotion instead of grounding it. But you've learned the power of moving slower than the surge of her feelings, slower than the pull of your desire, slower than the rush to react, explain, or escalate. And that changes everything. Because your rhythm, your tempo, becomes the container for hers. When she's anxious, you're still. When she's fiery, you're cool. When she's moving fast, you slow the moment down, just enough to let her feel it more deeply. This is how attraction becomes obsession. Not when you move with her mood, but when you lead her into presence. Because when you move slower, you force her to notice things she would have rushed past. The tone in your voice, the silence between your words, the weight of your gaze, the calm pulse of your body language that tells her I am in no rush to prove myself, because I already know my worth. That unspoken message slips under her mental defenses. It interrupts her patterns, and suddenly she's no longer controlling the frame. She's feeling it, feeling pulled into a space that doesn't move at the world's speed, a space that makes her second-guess her need to perform, to predict, to lead. You've slowed down the tempo, and in doing so, you've taken the lead without saying a word. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. You revoke the urgency. You move like a man who doesn't chase outcomes, but creates experiences. So when she laughs, you smile but don't over-engage. When she texts something emotional, you pause and respond with clarity, not eagerness. When she pulls away, you don't chase, you stay present in your own world. And when she leans in, you don't rush to close the gap. You let the tension build. You know that desire doesn't thrive in instant gratification. It lives in anticipation, in that delicious uncertainty where she's wondering what you'll do next and realizing you're not in a hurry to reveal it. Because you're not just a man, you're a tempo. You're a space she enters and finds herself slowing down, softening, surrendering. Not because you demanded it, but because your rhythm left her no choice. It's the opposite of performance. It's pure energy leadership. And the more you master that rhythm, the more you own the emotional landscape of every interaction. Suddenly she's the one wondering. She's the one waiting. She's the one drawn deeper by a man who's not trying to match her, but a man who's setting the tone. And that tone, it's calm, it's slow, it's powerful, and it's impossible to forget. Number 4, you say less, but everything you say lands. Your economy of words makes her listen harder. Words are cheap in today's world. Everyone talks, everyone explains, everyone tries to impress with stories, compliments, philosophies, a non-stop performance of "look how interesting I am." But you say less. Not because you're shy, not because you're hiding, but because your words are chosen. They're deliberate, measured, anchored in thought, not emotion. And that's why she listens. When a man speaks from pressure, his words float away like noise. But when a man speaks from stillness, his words cut through like a knife. It's not how much you say, it's how much silence you're willing to hold between the words. You pause. You let the space breathe. You let her feel what you just said before you say anything more. That's power. Most men fear silence because they think it means they're losing her. They think if they're not constantly talking, she'll drift. So they overcompensate. They flood her mind with jokes, overanalysis, opinions, affirmations, anything to fill the gap. But you've learned, desire grows in the gap. And in that space, when you do speak, your words carry weight. She hears the tone, the confidence, the lack of need. She hears a man who is at home within himself, a man who doesn't need to decorate his value with verbal decoration. And that contrast, it's electric. Because she's not used to it. She's used to men trying to impress. She's used to energy that leans forward. She's used to long explanations trying to win her over. But you don't explain, you express. And that expression, clean, minimal, intentional, makes her lean in. She wants to hear more. She starts watching for the next word. She notices your phrasing, your tone, your rhythm. Because suddenly your voice is a signal, a thread she starts to follow. And she's not even sure why. That's the beauty of it. By saying less, you invite her to feel more curiosity, more presence, more wondering about what's going on behind that calm exterior. And when she begins wondering, she begins investing, because she has to work a little harder to access your world. And we always value what we work for more than what's handed to us. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Your words are within your control, and you do not give them away lightly. You use them to create contrast, to shape energy, to leave impressions, not just information. She remembers your phrases days later, not because they were clever, but because they were intentional. That's what stays with her, not the quantity, but the depth. And that's why she craves you, not because you gave her everything, but because what you gave her was real and rare. Number 5, you anchor her with your grounded energy. Your self-control regulates her emotions without a word. She doesn't always know what she's feeling, not because she's unstable, but because the feminine energy is fluid. It moves, shifts, swirls like water, and when it meets chaos, it multiplies. This is why most men make her worse. They react to her reaction. They get nervous when she's emotional, angry when she's distant, eager when she's uncertain. They chase her storms instead of becoming her harbor. But you do the opposite. You don't chase. You don't resist. You don't absorb her chaos into your nervous system. You hold like a mountain, silent, solid present, and she feels it before she hears it, before she understands it, before she even trusts it. Something in her body recognizes the signal. This man won't collapse. That one realization softens her, because deep down she's not looking for a savior. She's looking for a mirror of strength, a rhythm more stable than her own, so she can finally relax. Not because you fix her emotions, not because you rush in to make her feel better, but because you never leave yourself when she's spinning. You've trained for this. You've studied your impulses. You've walked through your own fire and come out the other side with composure. Now when she tests you, consciously or not, she finds no resistance, no insecurity, no performance, only breath, only groundedness, only truth. That energy regulates her. She cries, you don't panic. She withdraws, you stay available but unmoved. She explodes and you wait it out, not with indifference, but with unshakable presence. Because you know it's not about the moment, it's about the container you're building. And only a man who is anchored in himself can build a container that doesn't break. This is the hidden science of attraction, not chemistry, not pickup lines, but nervous system leadership. Your calm teaches her body how to feel safe. Your discipline shows her where the edges are. Your restraint says, this is how strong love can be when it doesn't need to control, as Epictetus once said. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You've mastered your reactions, and in doing so, you become a point of reference in her emotional storms, a place her soul begins to remember, a place her body begins to crave. Because now it's not just about attraction, it's about trust, not the kind built through words and promises, but the kind built through state. She trusts you not because of what you say, but because of how you make her feel when she's least lovable. And that's where devotion is born, not in the highs, but in your ability to stand still when she loses herself. Because if she can lose herself around you without losing you, then you've already become her anchor. And anchors, they're not loud, they're not flashy, but without them she drifts. With you, she lands. Number 6, you remain unpredictable without breaking trust. She never quite knows what's next, and that mystery awakens her. You don't owe her chaos, but you also don't give her the script, because even though the feminine craves safety, it also craves aliveness. The spark of mystery, the edge of surprise, the whisper in the back of her mind that says, I don't fully have him. That's what keeps her engaged. And you, not by game or gimmick, but by natural self-possession, become the embodiment of that paradox. Safe, but not predictable, consistent, but not routine, present, but never entirely available. Because you are not static. You are evolving, growing, moving towards something bigger than her, and she feels it. She senses that you're a man who belongs to his mission more than to the emotions of the moment. And while she may never say it out loud, this makes her respect you even more. You don't cancel your direction to accommodate her moods. You don't rearrange your life to validate her fears. You don't become safe in the way of a tame house pet. You become trusted in the way of a wild force that has learned to aim itself. That's what makes you unpredictable. Not recklessness, but mastery of variety. One day you hold her in silence. The next, you disappear for 2 days and return calm, unchanged. One moment you're listening deeply. The next, you're already gone pursuing your next challenge. And yet she never questions your core, because while your actions are varied, your essence is stable. This is what most men misunderstand. They think unpredictability means being unavailable, hot and cold, inconsistent with their values. But that doesn't create mystery. That creates confusion and eventually resentment. Real mystery isn't about keeping her guessing your intentions. It's about keeping her enchanted by your unfolding. She knows you'll lead with integrity. She knows your energy will feel clean, calm, and clear, but she doesn't know exactly how you'll show up each time. And that is intoxicating, because her nervous system can finally let go. It can stop performing, it can stop controlling, and in that letting go, desire has space to move. This is how you bypass her logic, by never giving her a fixed shape to hold, by letting your energy be felt, not calculated, by letting her wonder not because you're hiding, but because you're growing too fast to be contained. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." You're the cliff, but the shape of the wave you return. That's what she never quite sees coming. She can trust you, but she can't own you. And in that balance, you become irresistible. Because every time she thinks she's figured you out, you reveal another layer, not for her, but for you. And in watching you unfold, in sensing that you are never finished, she finds herself drawn deeper, not to what you give, but to who you are becoming. And that mystery is a fire that never burns out. Number 7, you give her space to desire you on her own. She falls deeper when she thinks it was her idea. Desire that's planted is fragile, but desire that grows on its own, wild, untamed from within her, that's the kind that lingers. Most men rush to be chosen. They try to force desire into the moment. They drop hints, show off, confess, early escalate fast. They want the feeling to happen now. But what they don't realize is this: the moment she feels your urgency, she loses her own. Because pressure suffocates the feminine, even soft, unspoken pressure. A glance that lingers too long, a joke that's secretly a test, a compliment that's more about validation than generosity. She feels all of it, and she recoils. But when you give her space, when you don't follow up immediately, when you don't fill in the silence with chasing, when you don't collapse into her world hoping for connection, she starts to wonder, why hasn't he reached out? Does he feel what I felt? Why do I still think about him? That wondering becomes curiosity. Curiosity becomes tension, and tension becomes craving, because now it's hers. She's the one who initiated the inner dialogue. She's the one filling in the blanks. She's the one moving forward, not because you pulled her, but because she wants to. That's when it becomes real, because no one can be forced to want. But we all lean deeper into the things we feel we're choosing ourselves. You create that environment. You give her space not as a tactic, but as a lifestyle. Because you are not desperate, you are not empty, you are not afraid to be missed. You live your life. You pursue your mission. You tend to your solitude like a king guards his kingdom. And when she reaches out, and she will, you don't rush. You receive with calm, with clarity, with quiet knowing that her return was inevitable because your presence lingered long after you were gone. As Epictetus said, "He who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have." You're content, and that contentment is rare. It creates a vacuum of peace, and peace is addictive in a world of frantic men. She begins to associate your absence with safety, your quiet with meaning, your lack of pressure with authentic desire. And when she finally reaches, when she leans in with softness, instead of resistance, it will be because she wants to, not because you persuaded her. That's the moment everything changes, not when you finally get her, but when you realize she came to you not out of obligation, but out of pure choice. And that is when her desire becomes a flame she keeps feeding on her own. Number 8. You don't chase the moment, you shape it. You create emotional environments where attraction grows without force. Attraction is not an accident. It's not a spark you stumble into by chance. It's not a script you follow word for word, hoping for the perfect outcome. Attraction is architecture. It's about shaping the space around her emotions, guiding the atmosphere, the energy, the rhythm, until the space itself pulls her in. This is what separates a stoic man from the reactive masses. You don't wait for the moment to impress her. You create the moment not by controlling her, but by mastering your own environment. Your voice is intentional. Your presence is calm. Your eye contact is slow, unwavering, not aggressive, but felt. You don't fill silences with fluff. You let them bloom because you understand. Every interaction is a room, and in that room, you are the air. You can choose to fill it with frantic energy or with unshakable steadiness. She enters that room and senses something different. The tempo, the tone, the unspoken current of a man who is not trying to capture her, but to reveal something inside her. That's the difference. You don't aim to get something. You aim to awaken something. And women feel that. They respond to it not logically, but emotionally. Because when you guide the energy without force, when you create a space of grounded polarity, where she is free to feel, to open, to express, without judgment or expectation, she relaxes. And in that relaxation, she receives you. That's when it becomes unforgettable. You didn't seduce her with cleverness. You didn't push her with tactics. You shaped the moment so she could feel herself more clearly around you. Because the truth is, when a woman feels more beautiful, more feminine, more alive in your presence, she craves that feeling again. It's never really about you. It's about who she becomes when she's around you. And you've mastered the art of becoming the frame that reveals her most radiant self. The moment becomes sacred, not because it was dramatic or intense, but because it was real, unrushed, unforced, unmistakable. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. You found that strength not in chasing validation, but in cultivating an atmosphere of presence, an atmosphere that slows her thoughts, sharpens her emotions, and reveals the subtle truth she's been waiting to feel. This man knows who he is, and in his presence, I remember who I am too. You didn't need to steal her attention. You made her return to herself. And that is the kind of man she never forgets. She won't be able to tell her friends why. She won't be able to name it in words, but she'll feel it every time your presence enters her life again. It wasn't about being smoother, funnier, or more handsome. It wasn't about chasing, pleasing, or performing. It was about the hidden rhythm you carried, the calm, deliberate, unshakable energy that bypassed her logic and slipped quietly into her nervous system. She felt safe, but not bored, held, but not trapped, seen, but not dissected. And slowly, without understanding why, she began to want more, not more of your approval, not more of your attention, more of the feeling she had in your presence. Because you didn't chase the outcome. You shaped the environment. You gave her space. You led without control. You walked with restraint, but never hesitation. And that contrast, that rare emotional fingerprint, is now burned into her memory. She'll try to move on to meet louder men, faster, men more available men. But their noise will only remind her how quietly powerful you were. Because you were different. You didn't perform. You invited. You didn't seek validation. You commanded trust. You didn't rush. You waited for her desire to catch up, and it did. This isn't a tactic, it's not a game, it's who you become when you live by inner control over external approval. It's what happens when you stop proving and start embodying. She may never say it out loud, but in the moments she closes her eyes and remembers the man who didn't try to own her but awakened her, she remembers you. That's Stoicism. That's mastery. That's the invisible power you carry. And if this awakens something in you, if you want to keep stepping into this path of strength, stillness, and self-leadership, then stay with us. Subscribe to the channel not because you need another voice in your head, but because this space was built for men like you who are tired of noise and ready to walk with clarity. We don't teach you how to get attention. We teach you how to command presence. This isn't for everyone. But if you've made it here, you already know. You're not meant to chase. You were made to be followed.